The strange signal came on a Tuesday. Dr. Lisa Bennett wasn't even supposed to be working that night at the Arecibo Observatory. Her colleague had called in sick, so she volunteered to monitor the deep space frequencies. Lisa sipped her coffee, watching the usual cosmic static on her screens. Then it appeared, a pattern too regular to be natural. At first, she thought it was equipment malfunction. She ran diagnostics, checked connections, even restarted the system. But the signal persisted, growing stronger. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself, heart racing. The pattern followed mathematical sequences, prime numbers, then Fibonacci, then what appeared to be a complex encryption key. Lisa hesitated only briefly before calling her supervisor. Within hours, the observatory buzzed with activity. Government officials arrived by morning, including a tall, serious man named Frank Carter, who identified himself only as an engineer with special clearance. "We need to attempt communication," Frank argued during the emergency meeting. "This signal is clearly designed to get our attention. It could be a trap," countered General Miller, who had flown in from Washington, "or some kind of cosmic joke." Lisa stood her ground. "The signal contains coordinates in our own solar system, near Neptune. Whatever sent this knows exactly where we are." For 3 days, the best minds in cryptography worked to decode the full message. Lisa barely slept, surviving on vending machine snacks and determination. When the breakthrough came, it wasn't what anyone expected. "It's a distress call," she announced to the crowded room. "They need help." The message revealed an incredible story. A fleet of ships from something called the Galactic Federation had suffered catastrophic engine failures while passing through our solar system. They were stranded in orbit around Neptune, their life support systems failing. According to their calculations, they had approximately 60 Earth days before their situation became fatal. "They're dying out there," Lisa said, "and they're asking us, humans, for help." The news spread quickly through government channels. The president called an emergency session with NASA, military leaders, and top scientists. Debate raged about whether this was real or some elaborate hoax. Frank Carter headed the technical assessment team. "Their technology must be far beyond ours," he explained during the briefing, "but they're describing mechanical failures we might actually understand. It's like someone with a Tesla breaking down and needing help from someone who's only worked on old Ford trucks. Different technology, same basic principles." Lisa was invited to join the analysis team due to her expertise in astronomy and her role in the discovery. She worked alongside Frank to determine if a rescue mission was even possible. "The physics check out," she confirmed after reviewing the aliens' technical data. "They use a propulsion system based on quantum manipulation, but the failure is in their power distribution network. Theoretically, we could help them." "Theoretically isn't good enough," General Miller objected. "We'd be risking human lives on an impossible mission to help beings we know nothing about." Frank stepped forward with a proposal. "NASA has been developing experimental fusion drives. With emergency funding and round-the-clock work, we could adapt existing spacecraft for the journey." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's first contact with alien life wouldn't be a grand meeting of civilizations or an invasion. It would be a cosmic rescue mission. "If we do nothing, they die," Lisa said simply. "Whatever they are, they're intelligent beings asking for our help." The president made the historic decision 3 days later. Earth would respond to the call. As preparations began, Lisa found herself working alongside Frank to establish better communication with the stranded fleet. They learned the aliens called themselves the Varans, a peaceful species that had been observing Earth from afar for decades. "Why didn't they contact us before?" Lisa wondered. "According to them, they have strict non-interference protocols," Frank explained. "Breaking those protocols to ask for help was their last resort." Time was running out. Humanity had less than 2 months to launch the most important mission in history, a journey to save beings they had never met. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Aliens existed, and they needed human help. Some people panicked, others celebrated, but most watched their screens in stunned silence as world leaders announced the rescue mission. Peter Donovan had been designing spacecraft engines for NASA for 15 years. When his boss called him at 3 a.m., he knew it wasn't a routine matter. "We need your fusion drive prototype," the director said. "How quickly can you make it flight ready?" Peter laughed, then realized it wasn't a joke. "Sir, that's at least 2 years from testing. You have 2 weeks." Engineers and scientists from around the world converged on Cape Canaveral. They worked in shifts, modifying the spacecraft originally designed for a Mars mission. Peter barely left the facility, sleeping on a cot near his workstation. "This is insane," he told his assistant after another 20-hour workday. "We're trying to reach Neptune in record time with technology we've barely tested." Meanwhile, at Johnson Space Center, Commander John Ellis received the call he never expected. At 48, he thought his space-flying days were behind him. "Why me?" he asked the NASA director. "Because you've logged more hours in experimental craft than anyone else, and you keep calm in crisis. We need that now more than ever." John began assembling his crew. Dr. Amy Wilson, top xenobiologist, had studied theoretical alien biology her entire career. When they met, she couldn't stop smiling. "I've been preparing for this my whole life," she told John, "though I never thought my first aliens would already be dying." Chief Engineer Susan Parker joined next. Her expertise in adaptive systems made her invaluable. "If their tech breaks again," she said during her interview, "someone needs to figure out solutions with whatever we have on hand." Lieutenant Alan Garcia, former Navy pilot with test flight experience, would navigate the experimental craft. His calm demeanor balanced his reputation for taking calculated risks. The final crew member, Dr. Paul Mitchell, was a quantum physicist whose theories on interstellar travel had been dismissed as too radical by his peers. Now those same theories might save the alien fleet. "I studied their technical data," Paul told the crew during their first meeting. "Their quantum drive system is centuries beyond ours, but the principles are similar to what I've been working on." Training proceeded at a frantic pace. The crew practiced emergency scenarios, studied the limited information about Varen biology, and learned to operate the hastily modified spacecraft. Outside the NASA compound, public opinion remained divided. Religious groups debated the theological implications of alien life. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was an elaborate government hoax. Military leaders worried about security risks. A small but vocal group protested the mission. Why risk human lives for aliens? Their signs read, "Earth first." John ignored the noise, focusing instead on preparation. During a rare break, he called his ex-wife. "If I don't come back," he started. "Don't," she interrupted. "You're coming back. You always do." Peter's team worked miracles with the fusion drive. After countless simulations and one catastrophic test failure, they achieved stable ignition. "It'll get you there," Peter told John during the final inspection. "Getting back might be another story." The night before launch, the crew gathered in the astronaut lounge, away from cameras and officials. "Let's address the elephant in the room," John said. "This mission has about a 50% chance of success. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time." No one moved. "We're making history," Amy said. "First contact. First interspecies rescue mission. First humans to die around Neptune, potentially," Alan added with a grim smile. Susan raised her coffee mug. "To doing the impossible on an impossible timeline." As dawn broke, the crew suited up. Millions watched worldwide as they walked toward the spacecraft. The modified vessel, now named Horizon, gleamed on the launch pad. John took one last look at the sky before entering the ship. Somewhere near that distant blue dot, strangers waited, hoping humans would come. Despite everything, he smiled. The countdown began. The Horizon thundered away from Earth with unprecedented speed. Inside the spacecraft, the crew felt the intense pressure of acceleration pushing them back into their seats. For 8 long minutes, The fusion drive burned hotter than any human-made engine before it. Then, suddenly, silence as they reached escape velocity. "Status report," Commander John Ellis called out, his voice steady despite the lingering strain of launch. "Fusion drive functioning within parameters," Susan replied, checking her screens. "We're actually ahead of projected velocity." Alain whistled as he studied the navigation system. "At this rate, we'll reach Neptune in just under 3 weeks. That's half the time we thought it would take." "Let's not celebrate yet," John cautioned. "We've got a long journey ahead." Life aboard the Horizon quickly settled into a routine. The crew worked in shifts, monitoring systems, and continuing to analyze the aliens' technical data. During their second day in space, they received a new transmission from the stranded fleet. Dr. Amy Wilson was the first to view the message. "Everyone needs to see this," she called over the intercom. The crew gathered around the main screen as Amy played the transmission. For the first time, they saw what the Varans looked like. Tall, slender beings with 4 arms and iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors like the surface of a soap bubble. Their large eyes had no pupils, just swirling patterns of light. Humans of Earth, the translator program converted their musical language. "We are Admiral Vexnor of the 7th Exploration Fleet. We thank you for your brave response to our distress call." The alien leader explained more about their situation. Their fleet of 12 ships had been studying the outer planets when they encountered an unusual energy field near Neptune. Something about this field had caused cascading failures in their quantum drives, leaving them stranded and rapidly consuming their resources. "Our life support systems were not designed for extended stationary use," Admiral Vexnor explained. "Oxygen levels are dropping on all vessels. The situation is most critical on our research ship, where we have many young ones." Paul leaned forward. "Young ones. They have children on board." "We watch your world with great interest," the message continued. "Though our protocols forbid interference with developing species, your technological progress has been remarkable. We hoped you might understand enough of our systems to assist us." As the transmission ended, a strange silence fell over the crew. "They've been watching us," Susan said finally. "For how long, I wonder?" "That explains how they knew to send a message we could eventually decode," John noted. The journey continued, with daily communications between the Horizon and the alien fleet. They learned more about Varan culture and technology, sharing information about Earth in return. The conversations grew easier as the translation program improved. On the 10th day, disaster struck. A small meteoroid, no bigger than a pebble, hit the Horizon at tremendous speed. Warning alarms blared as the ship began to lose pressure. "Hull breach in Section 4. Susan shouted. John and Alan raced to the damaged area, emergency patch kits in hand. They found a hole the size of a dime, punched clean through the hull, air whistling out into space. "We've got this," Alan said, quickly applying the specialized sealant while John stabilized him. Patch holding. The crisis was averted, but it served as a stark reminder of their vulnerability so far from home. As they neared Neptune's orbit, the blue giant filled their viewports. Amy spent hours staring at it, mesmerized by its swirling storms. "We're getting close to the coordinates," Alan announced on their 18th day of travel. The crew prepared for their approach, running final systems checks and reviewing their repair plans one last time. "I'm picking up their beacon," Paul said suddenly. "And visual contact." The main screen filled with an image that took their breath away. 12 massive ships, each larger than anything humans had ever built, floated in Neptune's orbit. Their designs were organic, almost like giant sea creatures, with flowing lines and translucent sections that glowed with internal light. "My God," John whispered, "we really are making first contact." The Horizon moved closer, and the alien sent one final message before visual encounter. "Welcome, humans," Admiral Vexnor transmitted. "Our fate now rests in your hands." John Ellis took a deep breath as the airlock cycled. He checked his spacesuit one final time, making sure the custom modifications were secure. The engineering team had worked for days to adapt human spacesuits to interface with Varan technology. "Communications check," he said, tapping his helmet. "Reading you clearly, Commander." Susan's voice came through. "Vitals are stable." Beside him, Amy adjusted her equipment pack. Paul stood nervously behind them, his hands fidgeting with his scanner. "Remember the protocol," John reminded them. "No sudden movements. Keep your hands visible. Follow their lead for greetings." The airlock door slid open, revealing a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The walls seemed alive, pulsing with subtle colors that shifted like a heartbeat. The ceiling arched high above them, filled with what looked like floating orbs of light. And there, waiting in a semicircle, stood 5 Varans. In person, the aliens were even more striking than in transmissions. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their 4 arms held in what appeared to be a formal position. Their skin rippled with colors that seemed to communicate emotions. The lead Varan, distinguished by markings around its neck, stepped forward. Admiral Vexnor, the translation device in John's helmet supplied. "Welcome to our vessel, humans of Earth." John stepped forward, careful to move slowly. "Commander John Ellis, we come to help." The Admiral's skin flashed blue. "A concept we understand well. Helping others when possible is the foundation of civilization." As formalities concluded, the humans were escorted deeper into the ship. They passed other Varans who watched them with evident curiosity. Some smaller ones, children, John assumed, peeked from doorways before being ushered away. Admiral Vexnor led them to what appeared to be their engineering center. Unlike human control rooms with screens and keyboards, this space contained floating holographic displays and control surfaces that responded to the touch of Varan hands. "Our central quantum drive," the Admiral indicated a pulsing crystal structure at the room's center. "When it encountered the energy field near your Neptune, it suffered what you might call a resonance cascade." Paul moved forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his nervousness. "May I scan it?" After receiving approval, he ran his instruments over the crystal. "Fascinating. It's not damaged physically, but its quantum state has been scrambled somehow." While Paul and Susan began detailed technical discussions with the Varan engineers, Amy approached a different group of aliens who seemed to be monitoring life support systems. "Your atmosphere," she began hesitantly. "What elements compose it?" The translation took longer this time. Complex, scientific terms not easily converted. Eventually, Amy's eyes widened. "John," she called, "their biology is silicon-based, not carbon like ours. That's why their atmosphere is failing so quickly. They need different elements than we do." "Can we help them synthesize what they need?" John asked. A Varan engineer, identified as Chief Scientist Lelnar, joined their conversation. "We have the knowledge but lack the raw materials. Our synthesis equipment was damaged in the cascade." Susan looked up from her analysis. "We might be able to adapt our equipment to help, but the solution would be temporary." "The real issue is the quantum drive," Paul interrupted, excitement clear in his voice. "Their technology approached the problem from a completely different angle than our quantum research. It's brilliant, but they never considered the solution we might use for quantum decoherence." "What solution?" John asked. "Earth's quantum computers face similar problems on a smaller scale. We use error correction algorithms that might work here, just at a much larger magnitude." Admiral Vexner's skin rippled with what they would later learn was surprise. "You can restore quantum coherence." "Theoretically," Paul nodded. "We'd need to adapt our software to your systems, but the principles should transfer." The Admiral turned to the other Varans, their skin flashing in rapid patterns. They were communicating privately. Finally, he faced the humans again. "In our 1,000 years of space exploration, we never considered this approach. Our technology developed along different paths than yours." John smiled behind his helmet. "That's why you called for help. Sometimes fresh eyes see solutions others miss." Indeed, the Admiral's skin glowed warmly. Perhaps there is much our species can learn from each other. As they continued their inspection of the ship, a young Varan approached Amy, extending one of its four hands in what appeared to be an imitation of a human greeting. After a moment's hesitation, Amy reached out and gently touched the alien's hand. Susan Parker wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked alongside three Varan engineers. They had been at it for 16 hours straight, adapting Earth materials to alien systems. The translator device around her neck struggled with technical terms, but they had developed a shorthand of gestures and diagrams. "The power coupling is almost ready," she told the lead engineer, Trelvin. "But I'm worried about heat distribution." Trelvin's skin rippled with what Susan now recognized as thoughtful consideration. The Varan gently took the coupling from her hands, examining it with all four of their slender arms. "Perhaps cooling channels here," Trelvin suggested, drawing a pattern on the schematic. On the other side of the massive engineering bay, Paul Mitchell was deep in conversation with the Varan quantum specialists. His initial theory had proven correct. The error correction algorithms from Earth's quantum computing research could potentially restore the aliens' drive systems, but implementation proved challenging. "The scale is the problem," Paul explained to John when the commander checked on their progress. "We're trying to apply principles that work at subatomic levels to a system the size of a house." John nodded. "How much longer?" 3 days, maybe 4, Paul answered. "But that's just for the flagship. The other 11 ships will need similar repairs." Meanwhile, Amy Wilson had discovered something concerning in the fleet's life support data. She called an urgent meeting with Admiral Vexnor and the human team. "The research vessel Luminous Seeker is losing atmosphere faster than predicted," she explained, pointing to her tablet. "At current rates, they'll reach critical levels in less than 30 hours. The Admiral's skin darkened with concern. "That ship carries our botanical samples and 64 younglings with their caretakers. We need to evacuate them to the other ships," John suggested. "Impossible," the Admiral responded. "Each vessel's atmosphere is calibrated for specific crew requirements. The research vessel contains specialized elements the younglings need." Alan Garcia, who had been coordinating shuttle movements between ships, spoke up. "What if we deliver emergency patch materials? I could pilot our shuttle close enough." "Too dangerous," John began, but Alan interrupted. "The Varan shuttles are too large for precision maneuvering near the damaged section. Our shuttle is smaller and more agile." After brief deliberation, the mission was approved. Alan prepared the shuttle while Susan gathered emergency repair materials. The damage to the research vessel had been identified, a fracture in the external hull that widened with each passing hour. "Be careful," Susan told Alan as he prepared for launch. "That section has minimal shielding against Neptune's radiation." Alan grinned. "When am I not careful?" The shuttle launch went smoothly. Alan navigated the small craft through the massive alien fleet, approaching the damaged research vessel. From close range, they could see the fracture, a jagged line nearly 15 feet long on the ship's outer hull. "I'll need to get closer than we thought," Alan reported back. "The damage extends deeper than their scans showed." Susan, monitoring from the flagship, felt her stomach tighten. "That puts you dangerously close to their atmospheric venting." "No choice," Alan replied. "I'm moving in." As Alan positioned the shuttle, a sudden alarm blared through the Varan flagship. Admiral Vexnor rushed into the command center, skin flashing urgent patterns. "The fracture has expanded catastrophically," a Varan officer reported. "Inner containment failing. Younglings section now at risk." On the view screen, they watched in horror as a section of the research vessel's hull ruptured. Alan's shuttle was caught in the debris field, spinning away from its approach vector. "I'm okay," his voice crackled over the comm. "But we've got a bigger problem. I can see inside the ship now. There are younglings trapped in a section that's losing atmosphere." Without waiting for orders, Alan stabilized his shuttle and maneuvered back toward the damaged vessel. "I'm going in." That's suicide, John objected. The radiation levels alone. There are children in there. Alan cut him off. I got my suit. I can reach them. Susan quickly gathered emergency supplies. I'm coming too, she told John. He'll need help with the repairs. The Admiral's skin pulsed with deep blue patterns. Your people would risk their lives for our younglings. John looked at the determination on Susan's face, then back at the Admiral. That's what humans do. As Susan raced to join Alan, the Varans watched with a new understanding of the species that had come to their aid. These humans were not just technically capable, they were willing to sacrifice themselves for strangers from another world. Alan maneuvered the shuttle through the debris field with expert precision. Fragments of alien metal scraped against the hull as he approached the gaping wound in the research vessel's side. Almost there, he reported, voice steady despite the danger. I can see the trapped section. Susan checked her oxygen supply one last time. Remember, we have 30 minutes max in our suits with these radiation levels. They docked the shuttle against the damaged section, magnetic clamps struggling to hold on the uneven surface. As they prepared to exit, Alan pointed to a pulsing light visible through the breach. What's that? Susan squinted. Some kind of emergency containment field. It's failing. They entered through the breach, magnetic boots keeping them anchored as they moved through the depressurized corridor. 6 small Varans huddled in a sealed chamber beyond the flickering containment field. Their skin flashed patterns of distress, visible even through the cloudy barrier. We need to repair the containment field generator, Susan said, examining the damaged device. Then we can get them out safely. While Susan worked on the repairs, Alan tried to communicate with the trapped younglings. He made slow, gentle motions with his hands, trying to convey reassurance. One of the small aliens mimicked his movements, its skin shifting to a calmer blue. How's it coming? Alan asked, checking his oxygen meter. 22 minutes remained. Almost there, Susan replied, connecting bypass circuits. Their technology is elegant but completely different from ours. It's like trying to repair a quantum computer with stone tools. Back on the flagship, Paul was working frantically at a terminal when he noticed something unusual in the Varan database. This can't be right, he muttered, requesting deeper access. Admiral Vexnor authorized the request, and Paul began searching through restricted files. As he read, his face paled. "Commander," he called to John, "you need to see this." The files revealed a disturbing truth. The Galactic Federation fleet hadn't been passing through our solar system. They had been fleeing. "What are they running from?" John asked, studying the star charts Paul had found. "They call them the Vexari," Paul explained, voice low. "From what I can gather, they're some kind of predatory species, highly aggressive, technologically advanced. They've been systematically destroying or conquering worlds throughout this sector of the galaxy, and they're headed this way." "It appears so," Paul nodded grimly. The Federation fleet was scouting safe havens when they became stranded. John felt a chill run down his spine. Does this mean we've just put Earth on their radar? Before Paul could answer, Admiral Vexnor entered the room. The alien's skin had turned a deep, somber purple. "You have discovered our secret," the Admiral said simply. "You lied to us," John replied, keeping his voice calm despite his anger. The Admiral's skin rippled with complex patterns. "We did not lie. We merely withheld information until we could assess your people's nature. Would you have helped us if you knew the danger it might bring to your world?" John thought for a moment. "Probably. That's who we are. Precisely why we have been observing your planet," Vexnor explained. "Your species is unique, Commander. Despite your technological limitations, you possess remarkable adaptability and compassion, qualities the Federation values highly. So we were being evaluated. Yes, as potential allies against the coming storm. On the research vessel, Susan finally restored the containment field. The youngling's chamber repressurized, allowing Alan to open the emergency hatch. "Come on," he said gently, holding out his hands. The young Varans hesitated briefly before approaching. "We need to hurry," Susan urged, checking her oxygen. 10 minutes remaining. They guided the younglings through the damaged corridors toward their shuttle. The smallest one stumbled, and Alan lifted it carefully in his arms. The young Varan wrapped its 4 arms around his helmet, skin glowing with trust. As they reached the shuttle, emergency teams from other Varan vessels arrived to assist. A Varan caretaker approached Alan, reaching for the youngling he carried. "Thank you," the translator conveyed, as the caretaker's skin displayed patterns of profound gratitude. Back on the flagship, John confronted the Admiral with their discovery. "Your people need to know the truth," he insisted. "If Earth is potentially in danger because we helped you, we deserve to be informed." Admiral Vexner's skin shifted to a resolute gold. "You are right, Commander. When your team returns, I will reveal everything to all of you." The repairs to the final ship completed ahead of schedule. Paul's quantum correction algorithms, combined with Susan's engineering adaptations, had restored the fleet's systems one by one. Now, as the team gathered on the Varan flagship's observation deck, they could see all 12 ships glowing with renewed power. "I still can't believe it worked," Paul said, watching the quantum drives pulse with stable energy. Admiral Vexnor approached the human team, followed by the Federation Council, 7 elder Varans whose skin displayed complex patterns of authority and wisdom. "Humans of Earth," the Admiral began, "you have achieved what we thought impossible. Our fleet lives again thanks to your ingenuity and courage." The lead council member stepped forward. Their skin rippled with formal patterns as they spoke. "The Federation has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, we have encountered many species, but few have shown your remarkable combination of technical creativity and selfless action." John stood tall as he addressed them. "We came because you needed help. Any decent civilization would do the same." "Would they?" another council member questioned. "Many would have ignored our plea. Others might have helped only to steal our technology." The council had spent days reviewing the rescue mission records. They watched as Alan and Susan risked their lives for Varan younglings. They studied how Earth scientists developed solutions their own experts had overlooked. "The council has reached a unanimous decision," the lead member announced. "Earth will be offered full Federation membership, with all protections and benefits this entails." This announcement stunned the human team. Federation membership meant access to technology centuries beyond Earth's development. "And what about the Vexeri threat?" John asked directly. The Admiral's skin darkened. "They will come, eventually, but now, Earth will not face them alone." The Council outlined their proposal. Federation ships would remain in the solar system to establish a defense perimeter. Knowledge exchanges would begin immediately, allowing humans to advance their technology rapidly. Earth representatives would join the Federation Council. "This is overwhelming," John admitted. "This decision affects our entire planet. It's not ours alone to make." "We understand," the lead council member responded. 3 of our members will return with you to Earth as ambassadors. The rest of our fleet will position themselves beyond your moon, awaiting your world's decision." As preparations for departure began, Amy spent her final hours in the Varan Biological Archives, downloading information about countless alien species. Susan and several Varan engineers finalized the technical manuals humans would need to understand Federation technology. Alan found himself surrounded by youngling Varans who had taken to following him around the ship. Their caretakers explained that he had become something of a hero to them. "Will you visit us again?" one small Varan asked through the translator. Alan smiled. "I hope so. Next time without all the emergency repairs." On their last evening aboard the flagship, Admiral Vexnor hosted a formal gathering. The great hall filled with Varans and the small human team that had changed both civilizations forever. "Your species faced a choice when our distress call came," the Admiral addressed them. "You could have ignored strangers from the stars. Instead, you launched yourselves across space on an untested ship to save beings you had never met. John looked at his team. Susan's quiet competence, Paul's brilliant mind, Amy's boundless curiosity, and Alan's courageous heart. That's humanity at its best, he replied simply. The next morning, the Horizon prepared for departure. Modified with Varan technology, their journey home would take just 3 days instead of weeks. 3 Varan ambassadors joined them, eager to see the world that had produced such unexpected allies. As the ship pulled away from the fleet, Paul stood at the viewport watching Neptune's blue glow. "Everything changes now," he said quietly. "For better or worse, Earth just became part of something much bigger." "That's what exploration has always done," Amy replied. "Expanded our horizons, connected us to something larger." From the command seat, John watched his home planet appear on the main screen as they approached. The tiny blue sphere seemed simultaneously more precious and less alone than when they had left. "Send the preliminary transmission to Earth," he instructed Alan. "Tell them we're coming home, and we're bringing friends." Susan checked the Varan technology humming efficiently alongside their own systems. "Do you think Earth is ready for all this?"